Hello and welcome to NDTV. I'm Aditya Raj Kaul. Amidst the backdrop of the Trump tariffs, there is a new proclamation that has come in on the H-1B visa. Now, what does this mean for hundreds and thousands of Indians who are working out there in the United States? How many families would be impacted? To know about that and a lot more issues between the US and India over the last few months, joining us exclusively here is US Congressman Ami Bera. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for
joining us here on
NDTV. Good
NDTV.
to see you, of course.
I want to begin by asking you about the last 48 hours, the proclamation that began, and now there's been a clarification that the fees is only not annually, it is one-time fee, but it would certainly impact thousands and thousands of families. How do you react to this?
Yeah, this caught us by surprise. I'm a member of Congress, and usually you would think there'd be conversations and notification in Congress. So this happened as we were in transit on our way to India, so landed and heard the news. Yeah, I think it's a short-sighted thing because I think these workers provide a vital role for U.S. companies, fill vital technology roles and so forth. And I'm glad it's just not an annual fee; it's a one-time fee. But $100,000 is quite an incredible price hike for these visas. As it is, there's such a visa backlog in this. It's creating uncertainty. It's creating chaos. U.S. companies are talking to their workers saying, hey, if you're on an H-1B, don't travel abroad. Or if you're traveling abroad, get back to the United States as fast as possible. So, I think we need some clarification when we go back in session in about a week. I think you'll see members of Congress asking the administration for more clear guidance. Again, my perspective as a member of Congress, I think this is a short-sighted solution, and in fact, may actually ultimately benefit India, because if you can't get those workers to come to the United States, I think you'll see U.S. tech companies and others saying, okay, well, let's locate it in India where the talented workforce is.
Well, that's something important that you're saying, but will this also impact innovation? Will this impact scientific research, a lot of collaboration that's going on between US and India? Because you, Congressman, are Indian origin, you are Indian American, and there are many, many hundreds of CEOs, MDs, entrepreneurs, people who are doing innovation, disruptions in technology, who are Indian origin as well. How will this disrupt the entire ecosystem?
Yeah, I think it does disrupt things. I mean, if you think about the strides the diaspora has made in America, it's the richest, wealthiest demographic in America. It's the most educated demographic. You see CEOs of the largest tech companies, chancellors of some of the major universities and so forth. So we've really fully integrated and benefited the U.S. economy and U.S. society. We want to see the countries go closer together. I think moves like this, it's not targeting India specifically, but obviously that India does garner the highest percentage of the H-1Bs and now has the largest number of students coming. I think, again, my perspective is we should be doing the exact opposite. Like, my parents came to the United States in the 1950s for their education, as generations of Indians have. I would like us to see it make it more easy for folks to come get their education in the United States. Obviously, the Trump administration has a different perspective, and we'll work through those issues.
And there is the issue and the big elephant in the room about the tariffs. 25% tariffs and 25% penalties, 50% tariffs that are already applicable now, even though the trade talks are underway. Is this the right forward? Because, in the past, we've seen over the last 25 to 30 years, a strategic bilateral global partnership between DC and Delhi. Does this impact this entire partnership?
Oh, it takes it in the wrong direction. I don't think anyone benefits from tariffs. Obviously, India and Indian workers, they're a major export market, sending Indian products to the United States. It's going to impact Indian workers, but it's not going to help the U.S. consumer either, because we're seeing inflation and prices go up in the United States. So nobody benefits from a trade war. So it's my hope, again, high-level Indian officials, Jaishankar, Piyush, Goyal, others are going to be in New York this week. I hope they're meeting with, Secretary Bessent, the U.S. trade representatives and others, and hopefully they can get to a better place where both sides see the potential of victory. It started out as though, earlier in this year, with some of the digital services things, that things were moving in the right direction. Obviously, the last month and a half has not been what I'd like to see. Just talking behind the scenes, talking to business executives and others, I think there's a desire on both sides to get this to a better place.
So I have to ask you, I was at the SCO summit in Tianjin. While I was covering, there was a huddle between Putin, Modi, and Xi Jinping. Do you think that sent in shockwaves in White House? Because we saw pre-SCO and post-SCO a complete shift in the tone, tenor, and the way things were coming out from the White House. So do you think on the trade talks front, there was a paradigm shift after the SCO meeting?
I don't know if it was a paradigm shift other than, recognition, again, speaking to an Indian audience, of the Modi administration saying, well, we have other potential partners. I don't think India's long-term strategic interests, from a security perspective with China. Obviously, India's had a long-term relationship with Russia. And, what that relationship looks like going forward, we'll see. But I think there's a recognition still that the long-term strategic interests, economic interests, security interests still lie with the West. We still have to define what that looks like. India is not changing its non-aligned status at this juncture. But again, I think from an economic perspective, from a growth perspective, a security perspective, I think both countries, and certainly Congress recognizes it's in our interest to have a strong relationship with India.
We had the chief negotiator from the United States, Brendan Lynch, in India. He had a marathon meeting with India's chief negotiator, Rajesh Agrawal. And at the end, they told me that it was a positive meeting and they are heading towards perhaps the sixth round of the trade talks. Do you believe Trump's deadline of a November trade talks and the trade deal would finally materialize? This is something that the Democrats have been really waiting for, and they have been for a win-win situation for both India and US?
I'm coming up in my 14th year in Congress, and having spent a lot of time working on the US-India relationship, the trade deal's always been elusive. We've gotten close at times, but we've never been able to get there. I think there is an opportunity to get there. You can look at the template of how Japan's approached things, Korea, others. That might be a playbook that the Indians can use. Again, can you get to a 15% tariff level? Can you get to more U.S. companies investing in India? I think we see India as a real opportunity as we look at moving supply chains out of China. The defense-to-defense relationship seems to be strong, and so forth. So I think there is an opportunity. Again, my hope is you'll see high-level meetings taking place in New York, and at least a framework of something better can come out of this. Now, I know President Trump talks about the Russian oil and the amount of purchases. From my perspective as a senior member on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I think this is also an opportunity for India to flex its diplomatic muscles. President Trump sincerely does want to see an end to the conflict in Ukraine. It's been elusive. I think he's been disappointed with Vladimir Putin. The Indians have different lines of communication. They have a longer-term relationship with Russia. They probably will continue to have that relationship with Russia post-conflict. I think this is a time for Indian diplomats to step up and go to President Trump and say, let us participate here, give us a chance to help find a resolution here.
So we had Prime Minister Modi recently communicate with Trump. In fact, you had given an interview just a month back where you said Trump needs to pick up the phone and speak to Modi. He did. He wished him on his 75th birthday. But also, while thanking President Trump, he said that he supports the peace efforts by America in Ukraine. Do you think Modi can also play a significant role because he has good relations both with Putin and Zelensky and, on the other hand, with Palestine as well as Netanyahu?
Yeah, I think they can, right? I mean, I think this is a time for Prime Minister Modi, for Jaishankar, others who are seasoned diplomats. I mean, I got to know Jaishankar when he was the ambassador in the United States. Again, a veteran diplomat, very experienced. I would welcome the opportunity as a member of Congress for the Indians to play a role here. I think that's a way for President Trump to also feel like he's getting a win. And I do think the Indians, as someone who's advocated for India to take a bigger place on the world stage, I think this is an opportunity for India.
Congressman, one of the cause of concerns has been the terrorism emanating from Pakistan. I'll come to that in a bit. But first to the US President Trump, more than 40 times publicly in the press, in Oval Office and otherwise, speaking about US role or Trump's role in having a ceasefire. Now, India does not believe in it entirely. India says that there was a limited role, but this is a bilateral issue. It will always remain a bilateral issue. It was Pakistan that almost came to the DGMO talks and wanted a ceasefire to happen because of the damages that really happened. What really happened there? Was there now, again, an understanding that this is not the right way forward, or perhaps Trump was really looking forward to that Nobel Peace Prize?
I mean, President Trump has asked me my opinion. As someone who was paying close attention and obviously was talking to the Indian press and talking to the Indian government, long-term peace has to start with India and Pakistan. The U.S. can play a supportive role here and so forth, but again, the ceasefire really was something that I think both India and Pakistan recognized escalation here wasn't in either country's interest. So I think we were happy to see that they came to the table. And it's still a tenuous ceasefire. Part of the reason why I'm also here is how can we play a supportive role? How can we take this ceasefire, working with the Indians, and move this forward? What do they need from the United States, or what do they need from the U.S. Congress to be supportive here?
But Congressman, there's been a recalibration when it comes to United States and Pakistan as well. We saw a red carpet almost being laid out for Asim Munir, the Pakistan Army chief, in White House. This is unprecedented, never heard of. And on the other hand, then the CENTCOM farewell that happened, again, the Pakistan Army chief was there. And now on the sidelines of the UNGA, it's been spoken that there will be a bilateral between the prime ministers, but Asim Munir, the deep state plays a key role in Pakistan. What does this say about the false equivalence between India and Pakistan again?
Yeah, again, I can only speak from my perspective. And I think I speak for most members of Congress. We don't see India and Pakistan as equivalent countries. I mean, if you look at India, the economy, the geopolitical strategy, the security relations, India is a country on the rise. When you look at Pakistan, it's a challenged economy. Internal politics in Pakistan are challenging. Largest number of domestic terror attacks anywhere in the world are taking place in Pakistan. So two countries on very different trajectories. And then, long term, yes, Prime Minister Modi was in China, but it wasn't American missiles that were being shot at Indian planes. It was Chinese hardware that was shot there. So, these are not equivalent countries. And again, I'll say this as a senior member of Congress, senior member on the Foreign Affairs Committee. We see the long-term strategic economic relationship with India, and that's where we should be focused.
And finally, on the terrorism bit, the repeated attacks that have happened over the years, it's not a surprise. But the recent Pahalgam terror attack that happened, 26 innocent tourists being killed, and then a message for Modi by the terrorists. And then now we are getting continuous videos from Pakistan of Jaish-e-Mohammed, of Lashkar-e-Toiba, of Hizbul Mujahideen, not just mushrooming again, but getting support from the Pakistani state. They're changing their names so that the US sanctions or the UN sanctions do not operate on their names and nomenclatures, and they can freely run. How do you think about
the terror attacks in April were heinous, horrific attacks, and the Indian response was expected. India did have to respond here. I'm glad that both sides were able to find a tenuous ceasefire. My message that I've delivered to the Pakistan government is, look, right now you have real challenges domestically inside your own country. You have terror threats that are happening every day in your own country. You should focus on tamping down these terror organizations. It's not in your long-term security interests either. Again, they have real economic headwinds. They have real challenges inside Pakistan. We have to figure out how, or India and Pakistan have to figure out how to live side by side. But right now, I would urge the Pakistani government to focus in on their own threats in their own country and try to stabilize that.
And recently, just a few days ago, we had the Saudi and the Pakistan military pact. This has been spoken about a lot. There is a growing apprehension in India as well that one of the criterias of this pact says that if there's an attack on one country, it will be considered as an attack on both, and the militaries would be involved. And then the Pakistani defense minister goes on to say that there should be a Muslim kind of a NATO in this entire region. How important or critical is this statement? How will this change the security scenario in this entire region?
I do not want to see a pact and alliance as such. And I don't know that it's in the Saudis' interest, right? I mean, again, India is a vibrant economy on the rise. You've seen the Saudi leadership wanting to modernize their country, wanting to look for other partners. we still have some frameworks like the I2U2, which was India, Israel, the United States, and the UAE. That framework are things that we could build on. Obviously, post October 7th, it's been derailed a little bit, but long-term, India and Israel have deep relations. There's a large Indian diaspora in the Middle East as well. So, again, I don't think Saudi Arabia's long-term interests lie with Pakistan. I would urge the Saudis to say, you do have relations with Pakistan, but from an economic perspective, from what the Saudi leadership's expressed to us, is they want to continue to grow that economic relationship. And again, I think India is the better choice.
All right. Congressman Ami Bera, you are here in New Delhi, and you would be obviously meeting and getting a sense from the industry and different other sectors. What would be your message from United States to them to really calm the tempers and the kind of confusion that has been created over the last few weeks, not just with the tariffs, but now also with the H-1B visa? And you got a sense from the American sector as well, the industry out there, they have their own concerns. So when you are meeting them in India, what would be your message?
I mean, my message from the United States Congress, and I think in a bipartisan way, while Republicans are a little bit more reluctant to try to define what President Trump is saying, historically, Democrats and Republicans have seen the U.S.-India relationship as a defining relationship. We have to take a long-term view here. The economic ties, the ties between the diaspora and India, and then the geopolitical strategic ties. We see some of the threats emanating around the Indian Ocean. We'll be with some of the Naval Command and others to talk about that. This is an ocean that has India's name on it. So, we should be working together, not to foment conflict, but to have freedom of navigation, maritime security. We see what's happening in the South China Sea. We certainly don't want to see that happen in the Indian Ocean. So there's more opportunities for us to work together to create peace and stability, not just throughout the world, but certainly here in South Asia as well. And India is going to be a vital role in that prosperous 21st century. Again, I believe it. I think most of my colleagues in Congress believe it. And yes, there are some hiccups right now that are taking place, but long term, I think most Americans understand that as well.
Well, I take it that the Samosa Caucus is really hopeful for the robust mechanism that there is there between the US and India ties, and the tsunamis thrown by Trump are really not going to impact that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
Good to see you.